to the Radar Roundtable discussion, proudly brought to you by Say What and supported by the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe and SAI. My lovely name is Panashish Batimoto, but as usual, you can call me the Dynamite. Recently, there has been an uproar due to the fees hikes in institutions, but the most important situation at hand is that the issue has escalated not only from the fees hikes, but also to the dollarization of tuition fees in institutions of higher learning and other institutions as well in Zimbabwe. And joining me to unpack this notion today is our esteemed panelist and also students from across several institutions in Zimbabwe. Panelists, welcome to the show today.
Oh, yes.
Please do introduce yourselves, starting with you, ma'am.
My name is Mrs. Aramugwidi. I'm a hairdresser by profession, and I'm so happy to be here with Say What, with this program that it is started of dollarization in our economy.
Lovely. And to you, the lovely lady.
My name is Laura George. I am from the Harare Institute of Technology, and I'm also excited to be part of this discussion that hits a bit closer to home.
All right. Interesting. I feel like it's very important that we discuss the dollarization of tuition fees in institutions pertaining to the economic situation in Zimbabwe and also how it has affected you as a parent and as a student as well. So starting with you, ma'am, as a parent, how does the dollarization of fees in tuition fees affected you as a parent?
The dollarization has affected me. When I am going to work, I'm being paid in RTGS. So my child's school fees is supposed to be paid in US dollar. And how do I pay it when my RTGS rate yacho inenge yakadzika kana kuti inenge yakakwira, and then I'm not able, mari yangu yeRTGS haichakwanisa kuti isvike that US dollar iri kudiwa kuchikoro. So what do? I suggest kuti dai vaita kuti kana tichishandisa RTGS tobhadhara in RTGS, kana tichishandisa US dollar kwete kuti toti gumbo panze. Saka I think vakatitoshandisa US dollar tofamba naizvozvo, vakatoshandisa RTGS tofamba takadaro.
Interesting. All right, and moving on to the lovely lady Laura, it is right.
Yes.
Tell us, how has this affected you as a student?
I think the partial dollarization of payment and fees has affected the students and parents both. For now, you really need to play a bit of hide and seek with your portal, where you really do not know if you're owing or you're not owing, because no one really knows where the rate is at the time. But also, I feel like moving into developing a policy that allows one payment method of school fees can allow us to plan for the future. For you can save and open a savings account knowing that I'm looking at a rough estimate of such a figure. But when it's an RTGS, you do not know whether the dollar will wake up at 10,000 or 5,000. So you cannot plan effectively, and that really does hinder those who want to pay tuition for themselves.
All right, interesting. And pertaining your portal as a student, does it really show if you're owing the institution, and does the fees get gazetted at a certain point in time where you say, this is my fees and this is the amount that I'm owing as a student?
Thank you. Really, it doesn't. When we open for a semester, they really do not have a figure, as they do not know where the RTGS rate is pegged at. So you pay a particular fee to be able to register. And throughout the semester, the network is purportedly down so that you cannot view whether you're owing or not. But towards the examination period, or when you're expecting your results, that's when you are hit by the shock of your life. You find out you're not yet a millionaire, but you owe millions to the institute. And you haven't planned for such an event, which is really the problem.
Okay. All right. So moving on to you as a parent, we want to look at the economic situation in Zimbabwe. We have the rates escalating at any point, any time during the day. The rate can just change. How has this affected you as a parent?
This has affected me nekuti ndinotadza kuzokwanisa kuita zvandinge ndichida kuita. Maplans andinenge ndakaronga handizokwanise kuzviita nekuti rate yacho inenge yakakwirisa, yet inini handina mari yacho yekuti ndizviwedzere kana kuti ndiite sei. Ndopandinozoenda it's like ndikatadza ndopedzisira ndatadza even kana kuti kuendesa mwana wangu kuchikoro nekuda kwekuti rate yacho iri kunyanya kuescalata. Saka zvinobva zvandishungurudza ndobva ndaona kunge I am a failure, yet it is our economy.
So certainly right. And Mama, Trubutarisa, you are a hairdresser. So I want to get to understand how are you able to then put everything together so that you can pay the tuition fees in US dollar. We are not just talking about it being in US dollar, but we are also talking about the fees hikes. Remember, it used to be lower than it is right now. So tell us, how are you managing sa amai mukuru kamsoro murukuzvifambisa sei kuti vana vaende kuchikoro?
Ndinenge ndakutotrya by all means kuti zvandinoruka ndotoruka the best kuti ndidaidze maclients akawanda so that I can be able to pay school fees for my child. And at the same time, even ndikatrya kudzikisa maprizes acho kuti maclients awanda, then maybe I could be able to pay the fees nekuti vanhu vanenge vakawanda uye ndichitawo basa rangu zvakanaka.
Okay. So maybe for the benefit of our audience, remember this is a very serious issue and we need to talk about it. We need to raise awareness. We need to make noise about it. As a parent, Mama, maybe you can give us a breakdown so that people understand. Let's work with a day per day. And then monthly.
Pandinoruka ndikaruka mwana this week, mwana anofana kuita kana 2 weeks or 3 weeks akarukwa. Apa ndenda muruka $80 or $82. Saka kuti ndizosvika pamwedzi kuti upere kuti ndigokwanisa kubhadharira mwana zvinenge zvisiri kukwanisika nekuti mari yacho yandinenge ndichimuchaja inenge iri less, plus tiri munyika yekuti tinenge tichichema, vanhu vanenge vachichema like kana ndiri hairdresser, I'm doing it at home. I'm not at work, but I'm doing it at home because that's my profession. Saka ndinoitira ndiri pamba. Saka kana uri kupamba, you find kuti vanhu vanouya vashoma ende vanhu vanouya kuzorukirwa kumba kazhinji vanoda kuchema. Saka unenge wakutodzikisa zvekuti unopedzisira wato frustrated, but kuti uregedze kuruka, you need that dollar kuti rishande, kuti rikubatsiro ringosupporta. Saka I think dai vagadzirisa nyaya iyoyo.
All right, and to you, Laura, as a student, are you somehow involved in the process whereby they're saying your fees is now getting to this amount, or maybe through your SRSC? Are you involved in these processes?
It does appear as if we are involved, but we are looking at the minority who really have interaction with the majority, deciding on our fate in terms of school fees. And the structure of university is such that in terms of power, the SRSC holds the least power. So it's an issue that is decided upon by the minority, but affects everyone at large. But I would want to tap into what Mama was saying, that she has a speculated income. Maybe if we were to look at the situation where we draft a policy, where we have one means of payment, at least everyone can have an opportunity to plan ahead. Probably start saving for your tuition when you're in grade 1. The parents can start saving if we are to move maybe for dollarization as a whole. But the volatility of the RTGS does not permit parents to start saving as early as grade 1 for their children. So probably that is what I would want to point at, that maybe if we have a policy that can allow for preparations and without risk of waking up knowing that your savings amount to maybe buying a mint or something like that. Yeah, thank you.
Interesting. And I would like to push this conversation a bit forward to say in terms of the fees hikes and the dollarization of fees, as a girl child, as a student as well, how have you been managing?
Well, honestly speaking, I would remove the stereotype as a girl child and put it across as a student. Literally, we are suffering. Every day fees yakwira. And they do not understand kuti ndo zviri kuitika paground. I tell my parents today we are supposed to pay 600,000 RTGS. Next week, the institute is telling me I'm owing 200,000. The following week, I'm owing 300,000. So probably they are saying I've opened a small fees is owing enterprise. So that really affects you as a student, because you cannot now communicate effectively on your needs and wants in an institute, because your parents already look at you as the upcoming, I don't know, Magudumano or something. So I think we're having, a stipulated payment and looking forward to knowing that my fees at the beginning of the semester was $600 and we draft a payment plan that encompasses the student, the parents, and the institute. It helps the student to communicate effectively. But then putting back those barriers of a girl child, honestly speaking, we are now hustling with other means we were not expecting to hustle with, because you also need to make it balanced. I cannot only attend lectures on an empty stomach. In as much as people talk about focus, there's a certain way of dressing that can also diminish your ability to intake information in a lecture. I also need to look presentable for that lecture. And my parents cannot afford the fees to start with. How then do they afford to feed me, dress me, and prepare me to have the maximum experience at the institute? It becomes a problem.
Presentable for the lecture or for the lecture?
The lecture.
All right. And also, when I went through the invoice, specifically for that of the University of Zimbabwe, it says not that the fees structure can change at any time during the semester. So we're saying we've been forward. And Mama, as a parent, can I tell you about the invoice? Mama, fees not change at any time during the semester, which means we can mabhadhara 2 million, tinogona kuti pakudai 4 million pamusoro. Do you think that is realistic in Zimbabwe?
I think that is not realistic. I think pano, of course, pakanyorwa kunzi not that the fees can rise at any time, but tinoda vanofanira kutiudza. They call us and we sit down together. And then we discuss about it. And then we come to an agreement yekuti tawirirana kuti fees yazokwirawo kusvikira pakati pano affordwawo ne each and every parent ane mwana ari pa-institution.
Okay. And what challenges has this brought to you as a parent in the dollarization of the fees? My challenges amukusangana nawo.
Ma-challenges andosangana nawo ndeyekuti inini handisi kutambira mari everyday kana kuti handisi munhu uyoyo wekuti ndinoita zvimwe zvinhu zvekuti ndinohasila zvekuti ndinotsvaga mari kuti ndibatsire, handiti. Saka mari yangu kana ndichingoiwana once per month zvinotinetsei, zvinotondiaffecta because I need to feed the child. Mwana anoda kuenda kuchikoro ari presentable like zvataurwa. Hazvizodawo kuti ave mwana anonyadzisa, anoda kunge akapfekawo zvakanaka pamberi peclass achirukawo presentable pachikoro. Uye zvinhu zvacho zvisazoita kuti vana vedu vapinde into peer pressure because of this dollarization.
All right, interesting. And maybe I'll get back to you, Laura, in terms of your accommodation fees as well. It has also escalated and it's being dollarized as well. How has been the welfare of students in the structures that you have at your institution?
Well, I feel like the dollarization of accommodation was actually a benefit to most students, because you'd find out they really do know what they are paying at the beginning of the semester, and it stretches out throughout the semester. But then the challenge then comes where other students are opting to pay in RTGS. So accommodation at an institute is a luxury. The ugly part about FIX is they appear as rude. So when you are trying to find accommodation at an institute, it's a luxury. You need to be prepared to pay what they want you to pay, so that they can also afford to give you the best of the facilities. But then the only problem now is that the university is not communicating forehand. Like you were talking about the clause that UZ has, that at any time they can hike the accommodation fees, which is true. But then they need to communicate to prepare us, because you end up stranded. And that's not how it's supposed to be, because universities as a whole, there are places where you are exposed to all sorts of scavengers. That's when we then find my Range Rover my castles outside my universities, my accommodation facilities takuna machana boss ningi nanani, because wabadala kwekufira nenzara but awachade kufa nenzara. So probably if they can communicate forehand and not hike, because we are saying US dollar is stable, there's no need then to change the accommodation fee mid-semester, because the value is still the same. So that is the greatest concern we have. But those seeking accommodation outside campus, they are already prepared for dollarized accommodation because it's a luxury that they are trying to afford.
Let's also take a look at a student who's coming all the way from Malawi as well. In as much as you're mentioning it becoming a luxury, what are we saying to a student who's coming as far as Malawi?
I think that question really does have brackets to universities because I am not really aware of students from primary and secondary who travel all the way, unless it's a boarding school. Let us be honest, your right to education ends at 17. So when you are getting into university, we are saying you are prepared for that. So then the problem here now comes in with the economy, where our major source of currency, or our only currency to say, is volatile. So a counter policy for a person who is in Mashingo, in Bulawayo, which is what I am pushing for, of having one method of payment, would have allowed the parents of that student to know that my child is in Bulawayo, but I would want them to study at the Harare Institute of Technology. So for them to have a comfortable life in such a setup, I need to save up this much. But already as it is, we cannot look into the future without tapping into the present. That situation already is difficult, I don't want to lie. In as much as we want to address facts, but we cannot abandon the fact that we are humans. Trukuvaomesera vanhu ivavo kwete mbijana vari kutambura ndopaunotozoona kuti vamwe vanozoita mamwe ma-enterprise pa-institute avanga vasina kutarisira kuti they can tap into. So probably other organizations, discussions like this can expose the ugliness of having, not one method of payment of fees, especially for those outside Harare.
And yes, viewers, I hope that you enjoyed the show. A very interesting and educative conversation that is happening right here on the dollarization of tuition fees in institutions across Zimbabwe. And it's very key and important that the students, the parents, and the stakeholders come together to discuss this issue so that education is made affordable and as well free for people in Zimbabwe. This was the first episode of the dollarization of tuition fees in Zimbabwe. Watch out for the second episode. Until next time, it's the Dynamite.